Hello everyone! In today's video we're going to go over a few things that affect one of my favorite classes, the Druid. We're going to talk about polymorphing, wild shaping for the Druid, as well as summon animals, and how all of this can be done with one click and automated very easily, like so. I don't have any spell slots, but let's pretend that I do. Oh look, I have a black bear with one click. Let's go through how I can set this up as well as Wildshape. In this video I am using a few modules. I am using MIDI-QOL, Dynamic Active Effects, the Furnance, and Token Magic later on for some very fancy effects for my Wildshape. Let's go ahead and get started. So for this to work, your players do need to have the permissions to create new actors and create new tokens. My players are usually set to trusted because, well, I trust my players, but make sure that you are comfortable allowing the creation of new actors and tokens for your players before moving forward. We need to make a few changes to our MIDI-QOL workflow settings. We need to check the box Auto Apply Item Effects to Targets, as well as the bottom Add Macro to Call and Use, check that box as well, because we'll be using both of these for Summon Animals, Conjure Animals, and Polymorph, Wildshape. After that, you want to go to the Compendium, and you want to grab the Conjure Animals spell from the spell list in the SRD. I've already grabbed it, but we can go ahead and take a new one so you can see the process. So after you have it, you do need to change a few things. In particular, go into Effects and adding on a new effect right here. You don't need to change anything here other than unclicking this. After that, you don't need to change anything here because the duration will be on the spell itself. And then underneath Effects, we need to add a new effect and go down to Macro Execute. I will be using a macro I found online. I'll put a link down below to both the macro itself as well as the original source of where I found it. You can use the macro that comes packaged with DAE. The main difference is the macro that comes with DAE doesn't really allow for more than one creature to be summoned very easily. Whereas this macro, which again, going down below, will allow you to summon 2 or 3 or 4, and it is very quick. It does the process very easily. So let's move on using that macro. So I've gone ahead and imported the macro already. I've called it summon. However, if you've already imported the DAE summon, you probably want to change the name so you don't have any naming conflictions, and it's easier to keep track of as well. Back over to our Conjure Animal spell, we edit the effect, we select Macro Execute right here, Custom, the name of our macro, which is summon, @token, @unique, black bear. Notice that black bear is in quotation marks. This is because it is 2 words long. Whenever you have anything that is being referenced by a macro, or a macro for that matter, and it is 2 or more words, you need to have quotation marks around it if there is a space. 100 refers to the coordinates, and then here, if I wanted to, I could have 2 black bears, or 3, or 4, or 5, and it would process it very quickly. But we're just going to start off with 1. Make sure whatever named token you want to use, whatever you put next to the macro execute, is imported into your game, as well as make sure that your player has ownership to that token and to the actor. Now we are almost ready to move the spell onto the character sheet. We just need to do one more thing. We need to change the target to self. This will apply the status on the character, and as long as you have the About Time module, it'll actually keep track of the duration for you. So I have this set up, and there's nothing else you need to do because since we pulled it from the SRD, the duration is already there for us, 1 hour. And then we are set to put it onto our character. Now I'm going to select my character, drag the macro down to my macro bar, and then make sure you have your character selected. They don't need to be targeted or anything like that. And then just click the macro and consume the spell slot, and you will see the bear appears as well as the status icon next to your character. This is particularly helpful to keep track of the fact that you are using this spell, and also if you have About Time, like I mentioned earlier, 1 hour, the bear goes away and the status goes away. So you could use the same setup for Mage Hand, for Conjure Woodland Beings, for lots of different things. However, you do need to have a separate spell on your player sheet, on your character sheet for each particular instance. But I don't think it's that hard to set up once you know how to do it, and it, I think, makes your GM's job a lot easier if you can help with the process. Alright, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and move on to Wildshape. So the first thing with Wildshape is you need to have the same permissions for your player. They need to be able to create actors and tokens, and they also need to have permission, ownership over whatever creature they want to Wildshape into. So let's pretend my character wants to Wildshape into a giant eagle. I can take the giant eagle and drag it on to the character sheet like so, and I see this menu pop open with different options, whether it's a Wildshape, a polymorph, or I can change individual options as well, the custom settings. But it's a Wildshape, so we see I retain my intelligence and wisdom right there. And I can press restore transformation when I'm done. But because I like to make my game a little fancy, I am going to be using a macro that will add in an animation to show me changing into the giant eagle. The macros we'll be using today were developed by Mr. Hims with help from the Foundry VTT community. I'll be putting a link down below to where you can grab this for your game. We'll be copying over 4 macros from this page. The Wildshape effect macro, transfer DAE effects, remove Wildshape effect, and Wildshape macro. So let's go ahead and bring all of those over into our game. So with some quick copy and pasting, I brought in all 4 macros and set them to script. I next am going to go to class features in the compendium and import the Wildshape feature into my game. We are going to make a few changes to this feature. First, we're going to add in duration 1 hour. Next, we're going to change the action type to utility. And at the bottom, we're going to type in Wildshape macro in onUse macro. And then we are all set. Alright, so we are almost done, but now we need to change the Wildshape macro. And to change the macro, it is required that we know the actor ID of our original form, as well as the actor ID of our new form. And the easiest way to find this is to create a new journal entry, go into edit mode, and then when you drag on an actor onto the journal, you will see both @actor, a string of letters and numbers, and then the name of the actor. This string of letters and numbers in the middle is the ID. So where we have let actor original form ID, that is the name of the original form, our character name. And we just need to copy that and put it right in the middle there. And then we have new form. This is what we're going to change into. And we can just do the same thing, copy everything, making sure that we don't miss any letters, and put it right in the middle of those quotation marks. And then we're done. As long as you have all the letters, you are set to save the macro and move on. So there are a number of different changes you can make to this macro, especially in regards to the animation. However, I will not be detailing all of that in this video. If you're interested in that, take a look at the GitHub page and scroll down to the very bottom. And then the last step is to move the Wildshape feature onto both the original form and the form of your transformation. Now I know I've been showing off the giant eagle, but for the final step I'll be using Merrick and a baboon. The reason being because it looks best if they are the same size, at least currently that's how it's set up. After adjusting my Wildshape macro for our new actor and new Wildshape, we can just go ahead and click, drag this onto the macro bar, and then make sure that you have your character selected before you hit Wildshape. Use the ability, and we can see we transform and the character sheet pops open like so. And then if I were to hit the macro button again, I change back to Merrick, and the effect goes away. That's where we're going to be wrapping things up for today. As noted, it does look best right now if they are the same size as well as the same ratio. So I have 0.8 and 0.8. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. I'm happy to help out as much as I can. Thanks, everyone.